My name's Shannon Kelly, and I'm one of the associate editors for the Montana Magazine of Western History. And I'm excited to introduce you to what you're about to see. It's a great example of how even the most overlooked of communities have stories to them. They have more than meets the eye. And we're going to learn a little bit about the diversity behind Belt. And we're going to learn about how different media can be used to share those stories and promote empathy and curiosity. So specifically here, we're going to hear from Ken Robison and Jeff Ross. Sorry, this thing in my face. I'm only 5'4". And they're going to focus a little bit today on the Black community in and around Belt, and specifically a woman, a formerly enslaved woman named Mattie Castner. So some of you may know Mr. Ken Robison, historian and author extraordinaire. He's a historian at the Overholser Historical Research Center in Fort Benton. He's on the Great Falls Cascade County Historical Preservation Commission, as well as the Sun River Valley Historical Society. He is also a recipient of the Montana Historical Society Heritage Keeper Award. And then you may also be familiar with Jeff Ross as well. He's retired from University of Montana, and he is currently the education director at the Belt Performing Arts Center. He is also the director of the Young Valley Players, which is also a youth theater program. So with further ado, let's get this started.
Thank you, Shannon, and good morning, everyone. It's Jeff and I are delighted to be with you. You can hear all right in the back? Great. And it's going to be a pleasure to bring our effort to bring visibility to a feisty woman and the powerful impact she had on her community, the town of Belt, Montana. And no, that's not a photo of Mattie Castner, but rather Emily Langston playing Mattie in a play that Jeff put on a couple of years ago in the beautifully restored theater in Belt. And here's that bustling coal mining town of Belt. Beware of history erased. It's not a new concept. And we'll see it in action this morning as Jeff and I present Mattie Bell Boss Castner's story, the mother of that vibrant, multi-ethnic coal town of Belt that began as Little Pittsburgh, nestled at the northern base of the Little Belt Mountains. Regrettably, you'll not see an image of Mattie. No photo's ever been found of her. Yet images of historic people are extremely important. You saw all those images with Kirby's talk this morning, and frankly, one of those you saw this morning is right here. And this Mary Fields image, together with images of her driving carriages and standing outside saloons where she was the only woman allowed in the saloons in Cascade, the town of Cascade, because the men of the town invited Mattie, would not let white women into the saloon. But in any case, we won't let Mary Fields take over the story, but she's taken over Montana history in many ways with at least 6 books and many articles, and it's incredible. And a lot of that's due to the fact there are multiple pretty dramatic images of Mary in action, and there are none of Mattie Castner. Jeff and I have been on a mission to bring visibility to Mattie. My mission began when I returned to Montana about 25 years ago after my Navy career. I surveyed Montana's written history and determined that women's history was just beginning to take off, and that would be a priority with me. But ethnic history had been left out of Montana history and that became my foremost priority. Unfortunately, because of people like Mark Johnson with the Chinese and with the Montana Historical Society's fantastic focus on African American history, along with the Extreme History Project in Bozeman and many others. Black history is pretty amazing in Montana these days in published and presented form. The story of Black Americans in early Fort Benton is a story of many lives and events. Among the free blacks and newly freed slaves from the border states in the South who made their way up the Missouri River to frontier Montana in the years after the Civil War were young black women, Mary and Maria Adams, Millie Ringgold, Mattie Castner, all seeking freedom and opportunity on the upper Missouri. Intertwined with their lives were those of John Lambert, Duke Dutriel, and John Castner. I determined to present their stories in a major section of my book, Yankees and Rebels. Pardon me while I get organized. Yankees and Rebels. I chose the title Cradled in Dixie for that section of the book that had their stories to honor those former slaves and free blacks. That title commemorates an unsuccessful attempt to present the fascinating lives of Mattie Castner and Maria Adams in book form during the 1950s. A planned book called Cradled in Dixie fell victim to racial prejudice in Montana at the time. Author Florence B. Franklin proposed to present sketches of the lives of Maria Adams and Mattie Castner, both she had known as in her youth in Belt. Maria and her sister Mary Adams could take over this talk today entirely. Mary Adams had an amazing journey accompanying George Armstrong Custer to the Little Bighorn as personal cook. Her testimony after the battle rewrote a part of that story. And Sister Maria and her dynamic husband, barber to the presidents, Duke Dutriel, settled in Fort Benton, Helena, Marysville, and finally Belt, and they too could take over this talk, but those are stories for another time. We'll see if this works. Meanwhile, the mystery of Cradled in Dixie was never published, was answered when I discovered an article in the Great Falls Tribune about the proposed book. In the vertical files of the Great Falls Public Library, written on that article in the handwriting of legendary librarian Alma Jacobs, Alma wrote the following, quote, "This book has not been published. Mrs. Franklin told me in June 1970 the Castner heirs threatened her with a lawsuit if she published because the descendants did not want to be earmarked as having Negro blood." A.J. was the signature, and of course that's Alma Jacobs, that legendary librarian in Great Falls. So Mattie Castner's biography was never published. So here's the story of Mattie, the mother of Belt. Mattie Castner was born a slave on the plantation of Reuben Seltzer near Newton, Catawba County, North Carolina, in 1849. Mattie remained in bondage on the Seltzer plantation with Union soldiers until they freed her under the Emancipation Proclamation. Mattie then worked in domestic service in Newton, caring for a child until 1870, when the greater opportunity and promise proved to be in St. Louis, the gateway to the West at the time. Then There she worked as a hotel maid until lured by reports of opportunities on the upper Missouri. The Benton Record reported that Mattie Bell arrived Fort Benton with unnamed children on the steamboat Red Cloud the evening of May 11th, 1879. This steamer was crowded with 150 passengers with 23 children aboard. Apparently, a mother of the children by the name of Sire reunited with her children at Fort Benton. There, Mattie obtained work for John Huntsberger at the Overland Hotel, where she took charge of the laundry, and at a remarkable salary of $100 a month, and that's the equivalent today of about $3,000, which is some indication of the high prices in territorial gold rush Montana at the time. John Huntsberger, a veteran of the 16th Ohio Infantry Regiment of the Civil War, and was married to a mixed white Pagan Blackfeet Cecilia Armel, the daughter of a prominent fur trader. By 1880, Mattie owned and operated her own laundry in Fort Benton. In 1879, in Helena, Mattie Bell Bost united in marriage with John K. Castner, a freighter and coal mine operator. I might emphasize that Fort Benton during the 1860s and 70s was truly a multicultural society with about 40% of the residents biracial, a reflection of the absence of white women in the upper Missouri region at the time. This was a marriage of two hard-working entrepreneurs. John Castner, a white man, was born and raised in Pennsylvania, coal country, and educated in public schools and at a business college in Pittsburgh. In the spring of 1867, at Pittsburgh, Castner boarded the newly constructed steamboat Nora, bound for the upper Missouri River via St. Louis. The Nora, loaded with freight and passengers, snagged and sank in Pratt's Cutoff north of Omaha. On May 27th, another steamer, Silver Lake No. 4, loaded with 130 passengers took the 130 passengers off the sunken steamer and proceeded up the Missouri River to the Army post at Camp Cook at the mouth of the Judith River, 87 miles below Fort Benton. At Camp Cook, the steamer Guidon loaded Nora's passengers, so 3 steamboats to make it to Fort Benton, arriving June 20th. John Castner quickly mastered whacking bulls, moving freight from freight wagon master to operating his own freight line with 3 good 10-mule teams, hauling freight from Cow Island and other downriver stations to Fort Benton. He began ranching and exploring the region, visiting the site of the Great Falls of the Missouri in 1869 and examining the mineral resources in the Belt Valley, where he recognized substantial quality coal formations. He operated freighting until 1877, when he began to develop those coal deposits. Mining and hauling coal to Fort Benton while acquiring extensive mining claims and platting a town site originally known as Little Pittsburgh. Castner's first load of coal to Fort Benton was a trial which visiting geologist Professor Raphael Pumpley pronounced the best coal showing in the country. Castner and coal quickly came into demand at Fort Benton for both residents and steamboats, with the price per ton of $4 a ton at the mine and an astonishing $12 for freighting. John Castner formed a business relationship with merchant prince T.C. Power, and Castner became the coal king of Little Pittsburgh. employing 6 men on the mines and many more freighting. One Benton observer noted that the road between Benton to Castner's is fairly lined with teams hauling coal. After Mattie's marriage to John, the couple moved to Little Pittsburgh, where they together built the first log cabin. John hewed the logs while Mattie helped cover the cabin with brush, and both worked to daub it with mud and buffalo chips, chink the cracks, and line it with unbleached muslin that was calcimined. This was the beginning of what would become the Castner Hotel and the start of the town of Belt. This image shows the Castner cabin today, located on the highway north of Belt, and it's very likely a claim shack on a later homestead. It's not the original cabin. Mattie operated the hotel and restaurant, and as it evolved into the Castner House, while John's interest and attention lay in his growing mining properties. Eventually, he owned 2,000 acres of farmland acquired through preemption claims. In 1894, Castner and Power sold Castner Coal and Coke Company to the growing giant Anaconda Copper Mining Company. John turned to real estate and insurance, public service, and politics, while Belt grew into a multi-ethnic mining community of 2,500 residents from Scandinavia, Italy, Wales, England, and so on. Both John and Mattie were hard workers, handling their businesses with skill while building exceptional reputations within the growing community. As the Castner Hotel expanded, Mattie added a multiracial staff, including blacks, whites, and Chinese, and operated a first-class establishment. In addition, she successfully managed a substantial 640-acre ranch in the southwestern Highwood Mountains, stocked with horses and cattle, shipping cattle in rail cars off to Chicago markets. Although most of Mattie's time was spent in managing the Castner Hotel, she also cared for a baby boy named Albert, left by a young woman with the Castners about 1880. This would be the Castners' only child, and although Albert was never legally adopted, Mattie was a loving mother to him. This image shows Albert as a schoolboy, center in the back row, and Frank, or Little Duke, Dutriel, in the front right. Each spring, Mattie would put in a large garden, and as she supervised her workers, passing residents would hear old-time sweet lullabies in the air. Mattie used the fresh vegetables, including Montana's first sweet potatoes, to complement the diverse menu of wild game often hunted by Mattie herself. She grew more than she needed for the hotels, so she had vegetables to ship to Fort Benton. So 3 times a week, a distance of 40 miles one way, she'd load the wagons after sundown and drive all night to deliver them by sunrise. Prices for fresh vegetables were high in the booming river port, and Mattie received $1 a bunch for carrots and the same for a head of cabbage. With Mattie's expert management, the fame of the Castner Hotel grew widely over time. In 1903, a Butte newspaper gave this report. The Castner Hotel was not only a stage station, but an eating house that was popular among travelers. In the old days, before the Nyhart branch of the Montana Central Railroad was built, bypassing Belt, Castner's Hotel did a rushing business with travelers on the stages running to the Fergus County and to Nyhart and Barker in the Little Belts. As the 4 or 6 hole stage rolled into Belt, there was scurrying around in the Castner Hotel to provide plates and food sufficient for the passengers. In about half an hour, the bell, or rather the triangle, sounded, and everybody filed into the dining room. All were seated at a long table, and the food was served steaming hot with large plates. It was one of the most home-like meals to be had in a meeting house, and no one ever went away from Castner's kicking. Even that perennial kicker, the drummer, forgot his troubles and admitted that Mrs. Castner's chicken, her mealy potatoes, her succulent corn, as well as her fine pie and coffee could not be beaten. In the fall of 1886, Mattie made her first trip back to Newton, North Carolina, to find family members, reflecting the complexity of reconstituting slave families, hers of 5 siblings. She found only a sister in Taylorsville and a brother in Charleston, North Carolina. Her mother and father and other family members had been sold to other masters, and no record could be found. After returning to Belt, Mrs. Mattie sent for her brother-in-law and sister, Mr. and Mrs. Abraham Byers. Byers was active in revival meetings held by Brother Van, Reverend Wesley Van Orsdale, the famed Methodist missionary minister. They were held from covered wagons. In 1889, the Byers returned to North Carolina because of the failing health of his wife. Mattie made a second trip to North Carolina in 1897, bringing back her great-grandniece and namesake, Mattie Bell Byers. Mattie Bell made her home with Mrs. Castner and attended school, completing the 8th grade in Belt. In 1900, Mattie Bell married John Novotny, an Austrian immigrant, and the Novotny family moved into Great Falls. Castner's son Albert married Annie Segla in 1907 with the wedding dinner at the Castner Hotel dining room. Mattie Castner continued to operate both the Castner House and her Highwood Ranch until about 1913, when she retired from hotel keeping. Over the years, Mattie visited friends in Great Falls and attended the Union Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church as often as she could. This is the first AME church in Great Falls, opened in 1891. We like to think Mattie's in that congregation, but of course we don't know. Several years ago, Jeff Ross, Del Darko, Rolf Johnson, and I met several times in Belt to share our knowledge of Mattie, Belt, and the Black community. From these meetings, Jeff began working on stage plays to share Mattie's story. Over to you, Jeff.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be presenting with Ken, as you all can imagine, such a treat. I am the writer and director of the play, excerpts of the play that you're going to see, Mine Tailings, the Valley. Can you hear me back there? Okay. Let me say, first of all, that as a director of youth theater, I'm never off book. And my young actors didn't think that was fair. But to be honest, I couldn't do what they do. I could not memorize all those lines. So don't tell them that. But I will be reading off this script. Mattie Castner was and continues to be a catalyst for community. And the play Mine Tailings Valley is the first installment of a planned series of plays about the history of Belt. And with the Valley, we begin with the enslaved little Mattie in 1860, North Carolina. Why begin here? Well, Mattie's experience as a child is the beginning of her development as the woman we claim as the mother of Belt. We can never fully understand her experience, but we can infer from the limited historical record what she may have carried with her during her remarkable journey from North Carolina to Montana. In all that she carried, historian Tia Miles examines an artifact, a cloth sack given from an enslaved mother to her daughter on the eve of their forced separation. Miles writes that the journey of Ashley's sack, a family keepsake, is not a traditional history. It leans toward evocation rather than argumentation and is rather more meditation than monograph. She goes on to write that this book bears meanings about the burdens of being human in an inhuman world. Like Miles' history, out of necessity, this play contains something like Miles' evocations. We have the outlines of Mattie's life, but we lack Mattie's voice, lack even one photograph of her. So how do we get a sense of who Mattie is without her own words to guide us? Well, we look at her actions, her generosity, her industry, her hospitality, her faith, her tolerance, her determination, her business acumen, her courage, and the physical gifts she left the community. Turning back to Miles, Miles writes, having been treated as possessions and deprived of ownership of themselves, their families, crops they nurtured, and objects they made and maintained, African American survivors of slavery recognized the world of things. They lived each day in haunted awareness of the thin boundary line between human and non-human, a thinness daily exposed and abused by slave societies. So things matter. So we look at the historical record, and the imprint of her life is deep, but her voice is not. How to do justice for Mattie without appropriating her voice? For me, this nearly made the play a non-starter. A white male writer. It's a problem. A partial solution was to insert the issue of voice front and center in the play itself. So the play is also a play about voice and the difficulties of ownership and difficulties of bringing voice back from the past to the present in a way that's appropriate. The play is also, as you've seen, also informed by Tia Miles' work, and with stage readings and early input from our two main actors, Kira Rowe on the left and Emily Lund. Kira plays Maria Dutrell, and Emily plays Mattie Castner. Here we're experimenting with some of the language on the stage early on in the process. And it would be much better if they could have been here with us today. I would have just joined you in the audience and would have listened to their experience and listened to their feelings about their characters. But without them here, we'll have to do. So in the play, Mattie is well aware that she is in a play. That the words she speaks are not her own. She's offended. She says that she speaks with her actions, not words. And later in the play, she refuses to speak at all. Mattie says, we may play around the edges, but the serious real life you'll see most accurate in my silence. And it's in her silence, paradoxically, that we hear her authentic voice most clearly. Miles also writes that a motherless child was the root of slavery, the theft of the maternal. This theft of the maternal is an unavoidable theme of this play, one of them. So at the beginning of the play, in scene one, our young Mattie, here Brooklyn Phillips is playing young Mattie, is showing us where she lives in 1860 North Carolina. And I don't know if you can see that little yellow splotch on the map. Right up there. That's Catawba County. And here young Mattie is showing what could possibly be her actual entry in the Catawba County 1860 slave schedule. You'll notice no names of the enslaved, just the slave holders. And in the play, when she is asked, how come no names on that list, she replies, Mama says that names are like footprints, a print in the soil without a body, but we know who the body is. We know. So, before we get to the excerpts of the play, the video excerpts, I want to give you a little bit of context. And if Mattie's story is about building community, the Belt Theater, and this is the Belt Theater, has been a catalyst for community building as well. And you're looking at the building before it was renovated just recently. And to a new English teacher in Belt trying to put together a youth theater program, finding a dilapidated building with a leaky roof and a ballroom with ugly green carpeting, really a mess. A building that had spotty heat, no water in the winter. It was just a spectacular find because no one else is using that building. So we took it over. We took over the ballroom upstairs. And this is, you'll see a lot of Kira and Emily, mainly because they're in the excerpts you're going to see. There are other actors, just so you know. This is upstairs in the ballroom. And here you'll see them practicing. And those are not costumes they're wearing. Those are winter coats because it's very cold in there. And the other actors would be sitting along the wall, huddled together as we practiced. But they loved it. This is their playhouse. I loved it too. We had total control. Nobody bothered us. And you can see we built a thrust stage upstairs in the ballroom, the downstairs of the building being just a rack, basically. And this is where the Belt Valley Shakespeare players did their work. And here we see practice for As You Like It, Shakespeare's As You Like It. Here's a 12th night practice, and you can see a little bit of what we did upstairs in the ballroom. So, what about downstairs, where the real theater is? Well, first, this is Henry IV, Part 1, and this is just an example of the many productions that we put on in the last 14 years or so. So what about downstairs? Well, here it is being rehabilitated. Seats were removed. The walls had to be, there are stone walls on the outside, and they had to be secured. Each one of those bricks had to be secured. And this was done in 2016 onward, 17. And this is what the Belt Theater looks like today. It's quite a change. And this demonstrates, when communities value the arts, things happen. And students see what the community values and they react to that. Now, the theater looks wonderful, but as you'll see in a moment, the sound and lighting is not great in the video. So, I have some excerpts, about 10 minutes. We're doing with time pretty well? Yeah. Okay. So.
Well, look at you. Where you been, girl?
Can you hear that?
Dead? Well, yes, that is a good excuse. You? Same. Mattie Castner, mother of Belt.
Maria Dutriell, wife to the Duke and former servant to generals. Former employer.
General Custer.
Reason for leaving.
Employer killed that little bighorn.
References.
No. Killed that little bighorn. Employment history.
Enslaved.
Reason for leaving?
Emancipation.
My lord, aren't we special?
You've been special since your mother was protesting your breath.
Is that a we? Mattie and Maria are the mysterious forces helping create the play.
No. One of the advantages to being dead is so that you don't have to sit through bad plays about your own life. I mean, why bother dying?
Look, this might be fun.
No, I'm not that kind of woman. I talk with my actions, Maria, not with my mouth.
Yeah, a lot will have to be made up. Think of the possibilities.
You can't turn doing into talking, and the doing I have done is no doing that can be done on a stage without talking. To where have I arrived? Air so dry, ground green and hard. One can see so far. Not like my cradle Carolina Catawba, where the air's so heavy, inhaling in the hollers, you'd think you were inhaling the sea. This just the second sun I've seen standing on this ridge. Where have I arrived? The first sunrise, I saw a column of smoke rising, just leveling off as if God had smoothed it gently with the flat of his hand. Metis, possibly? Not John's camp. We're on that side of the draw. To where have I arrived? So dry. Can anyone work their first roots into this land? It'll take a hard soul. John can. He's no coyote, but he likes to dig. And you can't eat coal, but it can feed you. And so he'll dig, and I might right have to dig too, but that's his claim. And he knows I'm not here to stake anyone's, follow anyone's cause but mine. I have pushed too far to slow my gait and pace the fence for any man. Emancipate touched it off, done shot me out of cannon's mouth. And I heard that billow roll up and down the hills behind me in Carolina, the lightning leavening the sky, the sound leading my way out of silence, emancipated. First to Newton, where I paused to spell, then shot clear to St. Louis and on to the Missouri. The Nellie Peck's paddles a thump, thump, thumping as if it were my heart pushing the Nellie west. Me and the sire children, I their protector. My heart pumping twice as fast as that current that kept pushing us back downriver. But we moved only just as fast as the ghost flitting, stumbling through the thickets in the bottomlands. Shadows sometimes disappearing, but always following. And you can't look, but you do. And there they are festering in every shadow. And you don't have to see them to know they're really there. John, husband. I'll wave him passing, but he'll catch up with me or frown, for this is what he signed up for, and he's a lucky man and he knows it. Neither beast leads this two-horse team. A good man, a kind man. For even clouds are best illumined from within, even if one's belly's been brightened by the flash of war. We are well matched. and that you can discern from my actions, recorded, my history incomplete, my voice nearly silent, my image, in this new age of captured time, oddly missing. But I assure you, I am here. I am here most accurate in my silence. Let's just get this out right now. I resent anyone talking for me. You can play around the edges, but the serious real life is most accurate in my silence. My voice here today is both hearable and an illusion. And if pressed by my soul, I will deny having ever said such things. On the other hand, I may feel a small shiver of warmth, maybe even pride, by hearing on stage my story, however incomplete or wrong, rather than having my name kicked around in dusty conversation or frozen on a copper plaque. I can speak, can't I? Don't tell Maria. But peace. It has been said that I am the mother of Belt. I am your mother. So listen. Does a mother ever not know when she must speak? Must be silent?
Nothing I can do, she says. And I say there's nothing we can't do. And then she looks at me as if I'm a child who's lost something he's never had and hasn't the first idea as to what it could be. I could board a riverboat like the Nellie Peck without any luggage, but Mattie is always packing something no one can see. I don't get it. And I don't mind much, I just wish she'd give something to me. But no, she says, it's the wrong kind of weight. What does that mean? And she comforts me and tells me it's no small thing to carry the weight of your own ignorance. That it's okay.
That's the play. This is so flawed, and you want truth because that's who you are. But look who's around us now. We are not trapped in time. I mean, we are, you and I, but not these people. Not yet. And they can still shape the future. It's in the awareness of the past that gives them a certain kind of power. You and I and John and all the others gives them that vision. It's her greatest legacy. I know.
I have played along until now. But now the words that I speak that are not of my mind offend me. This.
But the record, they have so little. You have hardly spoken.
All right, then I never spoke in my life. You can't just create me from the outlines of a name carved onto a tree. What people said, some newspaper clippings, frontier stories of log cabins, drowned mules, stolen horses, vegetable patches, the coal mines, the work, the dust, the boredom, the sweat, the sweet potato Mattie, the generous caring Mattie, the mothering nurturing Mattie, the industrious frontier Mattie. All true. Ugh, not true enough. I'll speak not again.
Mattie will take questions, but may not answer a lot.
What is your legacy?
Oh, Mattie's legacy lies like a thin but important layer of earth, spread like ashfall across this landscape. A formation just under the surface that, like its geologic counterpart, is a nonconformity. All that comes after rests on this layer of humanity, born out of inhumanity.
My lord, people really talk this way now. Little Pittsburgh, Belt is my beloved. Belt is not my adopted home, we adopted Belt. Yes, we are in and of the ground you all walk on. You don't have a choice.
Will you ever find peace after what enslavement has done to you, to your family?
Does anyone ever forget what's been done to a mother and child?
When will I see my mama? Will I see her again soon? I'll see her again.
You won't see her again, child.
I'll see her again. She'll be
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home. A long way from home.
So I made a mistake and I left you on a sad note. You should never do that, right, in film or anything. The end of the play is actually very joyous, and the audience partakes in a rendition of Michael Rowed the Boat Ashore. And it's a very joyous ending, so I just wanted to end with that.
So here's John and Little Duke, and somehow the Little Duke trio seems to wind up in almost every photo of John Castner. In any case, John and Mattie Castner became major benefactors for the Belt community, donating land for schools and churches. Mattie's attention and reputation were centered on the hotel and ranch, yet she quietly shared food baskets and other aid to the poor. Meanwhile, John's business enterprises benefited the community in many ways. He paid special attention to the development of the Belt school system, serving as president of the Board of Education and even donating an extensive library to the high school. He served as Justice of the Peace and as a director of the North Montana Fair Association. He was an enthusiastic Republican and a leader in the Cascade County Republican Party. Ironically, John's interracial marriage did not seem to hurt him politically in Great Falls and Cascade County. After all, but Mattie's employment of Chinese at the Castner House became an issue. After all, Great Falls excluded totally Chinese from settling in Great Falls until World War II. While Belt incorporated in 1907, John Castner was unanimous choice as mayor, a post he held for 3 years. On December 29, 1915, John Castner died at the Castner House. His funeral was held in the Belt School Auditorium, packed with more than 500 for the sermon of Brother Van, followed by burial in Highland Cemetery in Great Falls. The Belt Valley Times paid tribute to the father of Belt. What can we say as to the lovable personality of our friend John Castner, who passed to the great beyond yesterday morning, that's not already been known to every reader of this paper? We do not think he had an enemy in the world. He had nothing but clarity and charity and kindliness for all. In the full strength of his mind, in later years, his energy and devotion to the betterment of the conditions of his home city, the clear vision of the future which marked the character of the sturdy pioneer and retained by him until death's call, and the loss will be keenly felt by many, in many ways in Belt. Mr. Castner did not live in vain. While his success is not reassured by numerous monetary standards, he's left lasting monuments to his worth as a citizen, a neighbor, and a friend. His personality will be enshrined in the hearts of all, as well as the broad-minded, considerate, sincere, kindly gentleman. John Castner's estate was valued at just $20,000. Of course, that's probably $300,000 today, but in any case, Mattie received $17,800 of it, and although retired from the hotel, she continued to make her home in Belt and operated the ranch until 1918, when she sold it for $17,000. She maintained a fine garden and held extensive land. On April 3rd, 1920, Mattie Belle Boss Castner, a daughter of the slave-owning South, but a respected businesswoman, passed away. In the words of her granddaughter, Ethel Castner Kennedy, Mattie commanded the respect of the people of Belt because of her generosity, industry, and integrity, and probably to some extent because she was the wife of John Castner, the highly regarded founder of Belt. In the 1980s, Belt historian Eva Stober excitedly presented this photo she believed to be Mattie to the local newspaper, only to later retract that, saying that it really was a photo that came from Butte or Helena and was not Mattie. Regrettably, to this day, no photo has been found, and I've tried very hard. Mattie's funeral was held in the Belt High School. She had won the love and respect of the Belt community, and in her memory, the high school students were dismissed from classes so they could attend her funeral. One of the largest ever held in Belt. A second funeral was held at the chapel of W.H. George in Great Falls with both the Belt Methodist minister and the Union Bethel African Methodist Episcopal minister officiating with interment in Highland Cemetery next to the body of her husband. The mother of Belt is dead, the Great Falls Tribune proclaimed, yet this was not the end of her remarkable story. Mattie Castner had long planned distribution of her wealth among family, friends, and charities. Her more than $32,000, she'd almost doubled her estate from what she'd inherited, left money to relatives in Montana, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, to friends like Maria Adams Dutriel, a small yellow house in Belt and ground, including rhubarb patch and $500 to a friend in Highwood, her piano and $100 to a Belt friend, 26 acres of land at Taylorsville, North Carolina, subject to life occupancy of her brother-in-law, $10,000 to the Freedmen's Aid Society in Cincinnati, money and life interest in the Castner residence at Belt to a friend, monthly payments to a brother-in-law, Alan Watts, in Taylorville, North Carolina, sufficient for his welfare during his life and funds for his burial upon his death. To Casper Fisher, another black man in Belt, the privilege of a room in the Castner residence as long as he behaves himself and as long as he remains in his right mind. To her lawyer, J.W. Freeman, her 2/3 interest in 80 acres of land. The residue of the estate, about $5,000, went to charity to be distributed to the poor and the sick through the AME Church in Great Falls and the Methodist Church in Belt, through the trustees of those two churches. Additional distributions included a lot to the Catholic Church in Belt. The Methodist Church of Belt received $1,500 cash, and the Union Bethel Church in Great Falls $1,000. Long after their passing, the good work and legend of John K. and Mattie Castner lives on. For several years, that's the AME Church today, built in 1917 in Great Falls, and it's undergoing restoration under a The bricks are being repointed under a grant from the National Trust. For several years, we brought the Castners to life during annual Waking the Dead tours of Highland Cemetery. And of course, Jeff's plays have brought hundreds to the beautifully restored Belt Theater. Finally, in 1989, Mattie Castner was named to the Gallery of Outstanding Montanans in our capital, the first Montana African-American so honored. Her plaque featured this tribute. Montana lost more than a leading citizen with Mattie's death. It lost the sense of community spirit that the mother of Belt personified. Mattie Castner's career in Montana epitomizes the frontier spirit on which the state has been built in the 20th century. Thank you all very much.